Hello and welcome to how to select the right retroreflectometer for your organization. Hi, I'm Greg Driscoll. I'm the president and founder of PPP Transportation Safety Innovations and also the American Traffic Safety Services Association National Past Chair. Thank you so much for joining me today. So let's get started right away. So how to select the right retroreflectometer really is based on three areas. One is the retroreflectometer's form, its features, and its finance. So let's talk about form first. There are two forms or two classes of retroreflectometers. First is the mobile, or also sometimes called dynamic. Next is the handheld, or sometimes called portable unit. They're deciding which one of these classes or forms to get will depend on its primary purpose or its use. So for example, if your primary purpose of this instrument is to do pavement marking studies or research, or is it for pavement marking management, determining at what point do we need to replace these markings, or is it pavement marking construction for verification that the contractor met your initial minimums? Also, it could be dependent upon your total miles managed. For instance, if you only have 50 miles or 100 miles in your agency, there's no sense in getting a mobile unit, right? So average project size, again, if your average project size, you may have 100 miles or 50 or 1,500 miles in your system, but your average project size is only about 2 miles long, well, then probably a handheld makes a difference. If most of your projects are much larger, then you may start talking about a mobile or dynamic unit. And then also, of course, the type of markings. What are you going to be focused on? Is it longitudinal, lateral, or messages, or all three? So let's take a closer look at the mobile or dynamic unit. There are 5 brands provided here in North America, and they range between $100,000 and $150,000. That's without the vehicle they're attached to. They do attach to a vehicle, and they collect data at highway speeds. Now, these are very expensive as far as a capital investment, but they're incredibly safe because you are driving at highway speeds and you're in the vehicle when you're making these measurements. They are best for larger projects, greater than about 15 miles, and that can change if you have a mobile retroreflectometer. Some states and agencies will allow mobiles to be used in projects just greater than a mile. They're also great for network-wide assessments and studies. Many states have went to utilizing a mobile retroreflectometer to assess their entire network system, and then they can better determine what markings need to be replaced, or which ones do not. They are also great for longitudinal markings. These are our lane lines, and they provide a semi-continuous measurement. Basically, at highway speeds, the better instruments will measure as many measurements as, or scan at least, every 2 inches at highway speed. So these are almost continuous measurement. And they're also highly technical to operate. So this is something that you don't want 5 or 6 different people operating this machine. You want to have a team that is focused and dedicated to this equipment because of its technical operation. Next is the handheld portables. There's about 4 brands. They range between $14,000 and $25,000. They're hand operated, as you see in the pictures here, and they're best for projects of small to mid-size and less than 15 miles. They're also great for specific project inspection or material research. They're versatile in their usage because you can measure longitudinal lines, transverse lines, message markings, and they provide a pointed measurement, meaning one section of that marking, it's usually about 10 square inches of that marking is actually being measured. So you can do rather small markings as well. And this is great for your crosswalk markings and so forth. And these are usually intuitive. The better ones are intuitive in operation. So you can have multiple people trained and operating these, although training is necessary no matter what instrument you have that you're utilizing to make sure you use it right. So again, choosing between which form, the mobile and the handheld, is primarily based on your purpose and your particular environment in which you're going to be assessing your markings. Now moving on to features. So there are three primary factors to consider in your features. And first, of course, is what are the primary features that you need for the device? What are secondary features and possibly secondary instruments that you might need for your assessments? And how do you want to manage the data? So let's talk about the primary features. The primary features of a retroreflectometer is one is RL. This is nighttime visibility. This is retroreflectivity. Every retroreflectometer must have RL because that's what it's there for. Next is QD. Now QD is daytime visibility of that marking or luminance of that marking. Now, so RL is about retroreflectivity, the light from your headlight hitting it and bouncing back to your vision. And then QD is more about the sunlight hitting it and reflecting into your vision. So QD is for daytime, RL is for nighttime. QD is not often, it's not something that's required here in the United States. It's often required in some areas of Europe and so on. But right now, I don't see any time real soon that we'll be moving to QD. But there are some advantages of having that feature. Next is GPS. GPS is a must. You really should have this for map plotting and for location verification. So if you're going to transfer that data and analyze it later, you want to know where that was taken. GPS will show you that. It geotags all the markings. And also location verification. If you have a contractor that's out doing verification of his pavement markings, you want to make sure it has a GPS so that it will tell you exactly where that marking was taken or that measurement was taken. Memory, well, memory is going to be important for the storage and transfer of that memory, but having that memory to be able to record the GPS, the readings and so forth, and some of the other features and data that we talk about here in the next slide. Next is a macro camera. Now, this is usually considered an extra or a bonus, but to me, it's really a primary item or primary feature that you should have. And the reason is because reflectivity, retroreflectivity is all about the beads, the volume and the depth of those beads. So therefore, a macro camera, when you use that macro camera as you're taking the image or taking the retroreflectivity measurement, it will take a picture of that line, and therefore later you can do some analysis, and if that line is not reflecting well, you can go back and look at too many beads, too few beads, are the beads too deep or too shallow. And by the way, you can learn more about that in our Retroreflectivity 101 course that's now available. Next is the compass and level. So why are these important? These are important because position and accuracy and direction of measurement. So this will tell you, let's start with the compass. It'll tell you what direction the instrument is in at the time you took that reading, which is critical or important at least, because normally we want to take the measurement in the direction of the driver's direction of travel. So because it is different from one direction to the other. The other is the level. So the level is important to me, a level meter, because if you tilt that machine forward or up or back, if that machine is not set flat, for instance, if you're doing rumble stripes or something like that, and if you don't have a level, you don't know if you've made a mistake. So let's say all of a sudden all your numbers are really high in this section of roadway, and you're trying to figure out why, or they're extremely low. Well, it's because likely it could be because of the tilt of that machine. Next is an internal printer. This is a must-have if you're doing field receipt or reporting. These are usually almost have become standard on machines, but they are used for instance, a contractor is doing some verification measurements. So they measure, they print the receipt, they tear it out, and they turn it in with their report. Otherwise, if you're doing it if you're an agency and you're doing it, that particular printout is probably not as necessary. And then, of course, it's the instrument's portability or its size or its compactness. Sometimes you may have to give up features or some other part of that machine so that you can have something that's more portable. And so that can make a difference as well. So how compact or how portable do you want the machine? Next, we're going to talk about secondary features or maybe secondary instruments. Is color measurement important to you? You need to know if you need to record if it's yellow or white, but is that particular, is measuring that color important to you? If it is, you're either going to have an instrument that does color, or you'll have to buy a separate spectrophotometer. Next is daytime contrast. Is that important? Now remember, I told you that QD does have some some qualities that or some uses beyond just knowing what that number is, this is a great source for figuring out your daytime contrast, and that's the contrast of the marking in comparison to the pavement around it. We're going to do some studies on that using these handhelds to get that daytime contrast variation and comparison. Next is marking friction, friction testing for pedestrian or cycling, or even for motorists on markings. Friction is an important factor for your slip resistance and your skid resistance. You have slip and fall cases and so forth with pedestrians. So we want to make sure that the friction is there. Now, there are no retroreflectometers that do that at this time that I'm aware of, and but that would require a separate instrument, as well as thickness testing. So a thickness test would be done by a different instrument, but that can be very important to know what the applied material thickness is, for instance, especially for your contractor verification and certification, to know that they put down the 15, the 20 mils, or the 90 mils, depending on what material they're putting down, to confirm that thickness, because thickness is directly impacts the quality and the durability of that line. Next is data management. So how do you plan to manage this data? First of all, I believe that you should always have some type of visualization software that you can look at the data and the images and the mapping at the same time and get a good overview of your data. Next is analysis. Are you going to be analyzing this? Look for technical problem solving or assessment. Are you going to be marking troubleshooting? And will you need assistance? So, for instance, in this, do you need a live help desk or something, or FAQ for troubleshooting? This is going to be really important. It's not just about the instrument, it's about the marking itself. So whomever you obtain a retroreflectometer from, you're going to want to make sure that they have the knowledge of the marking itself and the different materials and what can happen out in the field. Also, the comprehensive analytical software. So some systems offer a comprehensive software that can actually take your data and look at it and really break it out and break it down and determine what the possible problems could be. And for instance, is there potentially dew present? And dew is the water is like the enemy of retroreflectivity, and so it can look at the temperature and humidity and analyze it and say, hey, there's possibly, if you had low numbers in the morning, higher in the afternoon, low in the evening, well, there's a good chance that dew could be it. So these comprehensive analytical software packages can actually go into that and look at it. Hopefully, eventually, we'll have some AI in those that will look at the beads and so forth and determine, the depth of those beads, the volume of those beads, and so forth. So and you can get a warning from that software that, hey, this could be a problem. So these features are very important to determine, and they will also, of course, determine the cost or the finance side, which is our next slide. All right, so now data recommendations. What kind of data should you be collecting? First of all, you got to make sure that you know the measurement location. This is usually done by a GPS, as I said earlier. The project or roadway name. Who is operating? This is important because you want to go back to that person. When you were measuring this area, did you see this problem? That type of thing. A lot of times those photographs will help with that as well. Time and date. You want to know when you did that marking for weather-related issues, that kind of thing. Especially when you're going back and analyzing it. Same thing with temperature and humidity. These are the basics of what you need the instrument to be able to take. Now, a lot of these are manually entered, but you have to have a system that you can manually enter these. Otherwise, you're going to have to do a hand report and so forth. I like my machine to be able to carry this much information. Then you want to know the data on the marking itself. What is its measurement? What's its millicandela per lux per meter squared? How bright is it? What that measurement number was? What color is the line? Is it yellow? Is it white? What type of material are we using? Is it paint? Is it thermoplastic? Is it tape? What's the width of that marking? Is there any noticeable or visual damage, such as delamination or other things where tar's been tracked on it, or asphalt's been tracked on it, or oil or dirt? Next is road surface type. You want to know, is it a concrete road? Is it an asphalt road? These are things that really are important to have. Now remember, the meter is not going to know a lot of this. It'll know, of course, the millicandela, but a lot of this again is back-end data that you need to be entering as you're taking these markings, readings. So bead embedment, this is usually done again through, best way is through a camera system on the device. Next is you want to make sure that that data is transferable. It's easy connectivity. You can either Bluetooth, USB, or data stick. I like the data stick. It's very portable. I don't have to take the instrument in with me. I just take that measurement or the measurements, pull it off, and take it into my computer. Also, again, back to the visual software. I think it's important that you're able to see your data, your images, and your mapping all in one place. And then exportable common files, because sometimes we want to dig deeper into this data, we want to play, we want to combine the data, and so forth. So you want to make sure that you can export that. Usually almost every system has this, where you can export it into either Excel or CSV files, so that you can put it in a table and really play with it, especially if you're a data geek like me. So lastly is finance. So there's really two factors, and one factor creates is responsible for the other factor. How frequently are you going to use it will really determine how you should fund this instrument. So if you're going to use it daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annually, okay? If you're going to use it daily and weekly, and really even monthly, hey, you really need to consider purchasing or leasing this instrument. If you're going to use it quarterly or annually, you should consider more of renting, especially if it's annually or quarterly, every half year, twice a year. HaaS, which is hardware as a service again, or a pooled fund. Now, hardware as a service is just like software as a service. It's really kind of a guaranteed rental program, and it gets you the instrument at a lesser cost and get you access to other features like software and so forth. This is something that PPP offers now. Or pooled fund, where you go with another county or city or town, or you go with the county as a city, and you go out and you buy one instrument for the group. That's another way if you're only going to use it quarterly or annually. But again, if you're going with monthly, weekly, or daily, I'm going to suggest that you either purchase it or you lease it. Kind of deciding on a retroreflectometer can be a little complicated, and I would have to ask you a series of questions to really give you a recommendation of what your organization should have. So I've done that. I've created a retroreflectometer selection survey for you, and you can look at that, and I think we've got a link here I'm going to show up in just a moment. But if you'll go to that retroreflectometer selection survey and answer those questions, what we can do is we can give you a report back that looks similar to this, that says, hey, these are your priorities. This is what you want. For instance, this is saying that you are best to buy a handheld unit over a mobile unit. You're best to buy it rather than do a pool or HaaS or a rent. Rent is not something you should be doing in this particular case. Evidently, it's probably a daily or weekly use, maybe even monthly use. And then it says, okay, of course, you have to have RL, and this up here is your top priority, your second priority, and then things to consider. So you'll see, for instance, your top priority is also to make sure it has a GPS and make sure it has memory. And you want an instrument that has an internal printer and compactness. All this is a result of answering these questions, and I've went over some of what those questions mean, because it's important that you understand what those questions are as we went through this video. And here is the QR code for that questionnaire, and you can get that, either that, or you can go to our website, pppcatalog.com. That's over here, pppcatalog.com. And in that, you can find out, if you go to our pavement marking resource center, it's a great site. It used to be called the FHWA Resource Center, but it's all things pavement marking. Hopefully, we're continuing to populate that, and you'll be able to find this particular link in that section as well. So feel free to please email me if you have any questions. Connect with me with LinkedIn. Please, if you're on LinkedIn, you need to be connected with me. I do a lot of articles and posts regarding pavement markings and many other road safety infrastructure products, but also just solutions and ideas. I do a lot of innovative stuff and post on that. So connect with me on LinkedIn, send me some email questions if you have, check out our website, and we've got a lot of opportunities there. Also, I will tell you that we have recently put up a Retroreflectivity 101 live course that we have available for groups of agencies that would like to learn more about retroreflectivity and understand the basics of it and so forth. We do those either live virtually or live in person. So contact me if you have some interest in that. And for that, I am done. I want to thank you for this opportunity to serve you in this way. I'm honored that you've spent your time with me on this. And please fill out that survey and let's see if we can get you, whether it's our instrument or not. This will very much help you decide what instrument you're going to need to best fit your organization's needs. In the meantime, keep safe, keep our roads safe for the fathers, mothers, sons, and daughters that work on them and drive on them every day. Thank you very much, and God bless.